and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Once again, huge show for you this week. The All Blacks versus England, first test of the year for New Zealand, and then a host of other test matches, including that absolute doozy. The Springboks, the world champions, versus Ireland, the most consistent team over the last few years, to see who really is the best. There's a good argument going on there all over the world, all over the internet. So we'll do that. We've got Scott Barrett, the All Blacks captain, on. We've also got Georgia Ponsonby from the Black Ferns before their test against Australia next week. And we have your emails, your comments, and a winner for the All Blacks jersey from Players Sports that we promised from last week. So plenty to get into in this show. Both guys are out on the road today. Joining me, of course, as ever, Bryn Hall down in Christchurch after shooting 71 at Te Ara yesterday.
Chipper, come on, mate. City for you to have confidence. No, sorry, Ross, it wasn't a 71. It was a hard-fought 84. So, yeah, I had texted old Chipper, and the greens are absolutely not horrific, but difficult. So, yep, it was definitely a humbling experience playing out at Te Ara.
Don't worry, me old mate. I shot 99 there. So you're better off than me.
Yeah, what these two blokes are good at is talking footy. So let's talk a little bit of footy and not about punish yourselves in the rough at Te Ara Golf Course. Guys, the All Blacks versus England coming up this weekend. The last two games between the All Blacks and England have been the 2019 World Cup, 19-7 to England, and a draw as well before the last World Cup, 2025, the year before that World Cup at Twickenham. Apart from that, they haven't played in New Zealand for 10 years. So we don't have a lot to go on between these two teams to really figure out where we're going to. So we have to go back to the Six Nations, and I suppose we have to look at the way that the Crusaders played under Scott Robertson and to have some idea of maybe how this will flesh out for a brand new All Blacks coaching squad. So I'm really interested in your thoughts. First and foremost, what do you think, Jip, about the style of play we're expecting from New Zealand? Are you expecting a Crusaders style because of the coaching ranks? And should we be preparing thinking that's how it's going to play out?
No, I don't think it'll be a replica of the Crusaders style, purely because, I don't know, I just think these coaches set their teams up for the opposition they play. Yes, they'll have, I suppose, some of the DNA, like they can't get around there, but not forgetting Jace Ryan was there last year. So the forwards are going to be doing, pretty much the bulk of it. Defensively, defensive systems aren't complicated. It's just probably gelling with each other. And there isn't a lot of player change. The attacking structures, I suppose you'd have to look really back to sort of 2017, 18, but you've got to look at when Leon McDonald was with the Crusaders, but also obviously we've got Jason Holland there, who's leading sort of the back strikes. So I don't think it'll be a replica, but I do think what they're smart at is knowing where their opposition's strengths are and understanding their strengths and probably focusing more on themselves, but then putting the opposition in positions they don't want to be in. And as we saw last week with Scott Hansen, the depth of thought and understanding and the consideration that goes into a game plan, I think we'd be naive to think it's just going to be a replica.
The strengths of England, where are the strengths of this English side? Where do you think they have the ability to attack the All Blacks?
Physically, you look at their loose forward trios, there's Lawrence, Underhill, Earl, who's obviously really good off the back of the scrum, but that kind of loose forward attrition rate that they do have is pretty world class. And then I think also as well, the kick pressure, it's coming. So through the Six Nations, they don't like to play a lot in their half and they try and suffocate you, being able to make bad decisions around your counter attack and being able to get that wrong, which in turn gives them the opportunity to go to set piece and then being able to go through that way. But then I think also they have made a conscious effort to try and run the ball. So they're not just a one-trick pony. New Zealand fans will probably find this out when you do watch them, but they're thinking set piece, slow ball, and just kicking off 9 and being able to make it a really slow game. But I don't think they'll do that. It's going to be under the roof, and so they're going to chance their arm, and they have shown that against Italy and against Ireland. If you look at the two phase play tries that were scored in those two times, it shows a willingness to play, and the animation that they do have with that, it is very, very good. So the All Blacks are going to be tested defensively. Scott Hansen is running that, but they're going to ask them multiple questions in and around that phase play shape with the likes of Furbank and Fie and Boso with the counter-attack ability and also just their flair that they have. They will ask some serious questions. And I think lastly, just their pressure that they do. They talk around effort areas within that group and being able to do 1, 2, 3, 4 efforts. And so we've seen that through the duration of the Six Nations, and even before that with the World Cup, get into a semi-final because they work pretty hard off the ball, and it's a big DNA with them. So it's going to be an enticing encounter. And I think the one thing for the All Blacks that is a positive, it's going to be under a roof. So skill set wise, it's going to be a lot easier to try and go through them and being able to hold on the ball and having that marry up and that balance. I believe that using the kick game, which they will implement against this English side as well.
Chip, you touched on defence. I've had a question come through from Dan Nermal via email. He says, in his opinion, the biggest challenge against England is setting up a solid defensive structure. If you were Scott Hansen, how do you get the players trained in a new defensive structure within a week? I mean, you touched on it briefly, but maybe can you go a bit more in depth?
I don't think it's new. I mean, Bryn, you can come in here if I get this wrong, but most of the New Zealand sides defend pretty similar in and around the tail of the line out the back of the scrum. And then, as we've seen with a lot of international rugby, it's all about that line speed pressure. Put skills under pressure, and that's when it comes to, working in threes, knowing your inside, knowing your outside, and having that understanding. I don't think we're going to see a rush D that England have obviously, sort of nailed. I don't want to say nailed because they've got to a position where it's a threat. But as we know with rush D, it can leave holes. So I don't think New Zealand will implement that, but I do think they'll have that strong presence up the field and they'll back themselves to cover anything if England do manage to get to the edge. And where I see, if you look at the loose forwards, and I know it's been a big topic of discussion, they are going to go hard at the breakdown. Not one player in that loose forward mix does not, set themselves up in and around the breakdown. I just can't, like Luke Jacobson, top turnovers, Stolten Papali'i, just a physical menace. Ethan Blackadder, you don't even need to really talk about him. You just need to go watch the guy. He's a menace. Samo Penny-Finau, you've got Artie Severe, who's a freak. So I do think the defence begins and ends, obviously, at the set piece, but more importantly, at the breakdown. If you can buy your team time, it doesn't really matter about the system you've got, because if you buy time, you can see the threats and then you can get that line speed pressure, if that makes sense. So it's not such a system thing. It's more, who are they going to pick to do the job at the breakdown?
Your 10 and 15 communication in the backfield is really, really important. So I think with having this is who I think is going to be playing, Damien McKenzie at 10 and Beauden Barrett at 15. If you're talking about communication styles and giving your wingers confidence to get up in a short period of time, their communication skills will be vital within that backfield and that pendulum. So I think with having those two in the backfield to give the confidence of a Talia, Severe or Clark, whoever are on those edges, along with the loose forwards and the centres in the edge defenders, they can give them confidence with their communication styles. And Chip has talked about it a lot with Bodie and how important and how comfortable it makes you feel when you've got those communication skills. But also to back up what Chip's saying, the first up tackle is going to be really important. Anytime you're going passive and you're not making dominant defensive tackles, that's when the England can play on top of things. And I think Alex Mitchell is going to be really pivotal in and around that. I think he's done that for the Six Nations. He's done that for his club, and his sniping ability to be able to choose and being able to penetrate and ask questions of that hard defense will be really important for the All Blacks. So the physicality area, and I think the team that is selected will have to do a job in and around trying to slow down this ball of England side, because when they do attack, it's very tough.
And with no Ford and no Farrell, Smith is going to get his chance for England, isn't he? So there's going to be a lot of attacking thought out there.
I actually think that suits them, especially under the roof, obviously. But if you look at when England did well in the Six Nations, they kicked under 25 times. When they lost, they were in the 30s. And I'm not saying it's all to do with kicking, but actually when they play, and you've got a player like Smith, they're at their best. They'll still need to play that territory-based game. And if you look at when they've had success, they've averaged around 60% possession, 60% territory. So yes, you've got to play in the right end of the field, but this team can play. And I do think they've grown a lot of confidence out the back end. I know they dropped that last one against France, but it was in France. So, like at 33-31, they could have finished on a real high. But beating Ireland at Twickenham, I think has made them believe in their defensive structure probably the most, but also their ability to attack. They only kicked 22 times against Ireland and won that game. So, and we saw a lot of impetus out of their backfield. So, and a lot of it came through, Ben Earl, but I think this young lad, Furbank, who obviously played for the championship winning Northampton, could be a point of difference for them.
Furbank and Bossel, I think like the way that they play off counter-attack, when they do play fast and they do get it right, they've actually got a couple of shapes that they can score off. So they're actually not one-dimensional. They can actually change in between a couple of phase play shapes that they showed throughout the Six Nations. And so it shows a willingness and I guess evolving as a team. And to New Zealand public, they'll be thinking, this is an old England team. We know what they're going to play. But I'll tell you what, you're going to be highly entertained with how they do play. And even with that, they also have really good balance. Now, we talked around a lot, Jip, when you're not getting that momentum and sometimes you hold on to the ball too long and that's when mistakes will happen or a penalty defensively will be made from a defensive side. But if they aren't going anywhere and they have played their arms or they've played their cards, they will then go to the contestable games of Alex Mitchell and Marcus Smith. And that's a really good way to be able to build that momentum back and put the team back under pressure. So the All Blacks are going to have to be on their job pretty early on. I know it's a new group. No, sorry, not a new group, a new coaching group, but collectively with them working together. I think this first test match, if you're an England side, you'd be licking your lips and knowing that this is probably going to be the best chance out of the two test matches, knowing that the All Blacks in the second test match will see the preview, the review, and will be that more, I guess, test fit and battle tested.
If you look at England, their first instinct is to have a couple of licks, then kick.
Yeah.
I think previously they'll probably look, let's play territory. And I do go back when they've got high territory, high position, they win games. So I'm not saying they're not going to kick, but their first instinct, especially with Furbank, is to have a lick. When you look at England and when they've struggled is coming out of their own territory. So look for a long kicking game. I think landing a box kick, Bryn, around the 50 or the 60 metres out from your try line is probably only going to play into their hands. So going into the 22 and making them either have a crack and have that error, or they're going to give you a line out on the halfway and then you've got your set. I'm just not sure we'll see as many as what we've probably seen the Crusaders do, as everyone will expect. And Bryn was the perfect architect of this, is the old Boks kick. Him and George Bridge, they must have lived together. They were so good at it. But, I don't think we're going to see that sort of play in and around that 50. I think they're going to say, okay, if you want to beat us, come from deep. Otherwise, give us a line out at halfway. I'm asking a lot of you here, Brynner, question without notice, so bear with me. Can you remember the approach in terms of your kick strat when you went to Forsyth Bar?
Yeah, I can. It didn't change. To be honest, it actually didn't change a lot. It didn't really change a lot. I think the great thing about Forsyth and whenever we played there was just knowing that the conditions were going to be great. So whatever kicking game you went with, there wasn't going to be any barriers or, any it's going to be tough to be able to do it in those conditions because there's no wind or anything, right? So I think it was just dependent on where we felt that the best kicks or where we could try and do it. Like off the line out, it might be a bit easier to be able to do a midfield bomb straight to the middle of the field, knowing that there's going to be no escorts and the midfielders or the wingers can't escort that. So going to the middle of the field with your 12, your 13, your 14 coming up high through that pressure was an area we wanted to go through the week. So, but to answer your question, there wasn't a lot in and around Forsyth and being able to go really in depth and deeply thinking around the kicking around that.
You talk about escorts there, and I think they're going to be an important part for the All Blacks because a lot of the English kicks, when they've been successful, have been contestables of this steward in that air and sort of not really waiting for the All Blacks to give that in-air aerial battle. They're actually quite handy at it themselves.
What do you mean by the escort?
From that box kick, which is usually trying to be a contestable kick, you can probably see all the people defensively are trying to run back and not block, but they're trying to impede the chaser coming through. So they do it a lot in the Northern Hemisphere. You'll see in the Six Nations through the kicks that they did do. There's 5-6 players because they're already clued up in and around it, and it's kind of to give your winger or whoever's trying to catch that ball time and not going to be able to be impeded from the attacking kicker that's going to be coming, which is usually a winger. So your job as an escorter is to try and get into that space, run back to where the guy's going to catch the ball and making it really hard for the winger to then try and get up for the ball or try and impede and trying to make a mistake from their box kick.
And there's probably 3 or 4, Ross, and they're trying to create a pocket where that player is going to land. So he's got clear air. And, I mean, Ben O'Keefe, big fan of the pod, so I've got to get the laws right here, but you can't change your line. So you can look at the ball, you watch it kick, and because it's normally a forward or midfield as if it's a crossfield contestable, but you're looking at the player that's going to catch it. And if your focus is on there and you don't change your angle from the moment of the kick, you can just keep running that line, and hopefully you get there as 3 or 4, and it creates a pocket for them not to be able to contest.
So when you look at this All Black squad and taking all of those things that you've all said into account there, let's have a look at who's going to play this weekend. We've talked about the 10-15 combo. Jip, you've suggested that you'll see Clark and Reece on the right wing, not Talea.
Look, it's so hard, but I just... If Caleb's not fit, obviously has that rib injury, I think Mark will go into the 11 and Reece into 14. And then if you look at the season behind, I suppose, a team that we're not used to seeing struggling with the Crusaders, Sevu Reece, how can you not pick him? Man, he is just on the back foot, has played, I would say, his best season. So I think he, and obviously knows the game plan that these coaches want to play, even with Leon there. And I just think Caleb's a point of difference. His body's in immaculate condition. If he is fit, there's just something about him at the moment. He's got his mojo back. So I don't know, Bryn, you may disagree, and it was hard for me to come up with that, but I just think on form and the position, if you look at Sevu's season, the position he was in, I just don't know. If you get a forward pack going forward, put him in that position, man. The form he's in, I just don't know how you can leave him out.
Yep, I would go Mark Talea and Sevu just for this point, Jip. The reason why I would do that is just knowing probably the phase play shape and how they want to attack. The roving wingers is really, really important. And you look at those two, they're probably the best in New Zealand around roving in terms of not just off 9, but the work rate to get outside 10 or in those kind of channels. And sorry, Caleb can do that. I'm just going more so for Mark and Sevu because I find that's a really good traits from both of them, whether that's, working off the ball on attack, but defensively as well, moving in and around and being high. Both of them are very, very fit. So that would be my decision around just having them. But you could have a Caleb Clark. You're talking around if you go into a kicking game, look, he's probably the best aerial winger in the game, whether it's off 10 or off 9. He is pretty much getting ball on hand, catching that 2 hands in the air or being able to get that ball back. So for this week, just predominantly in and around that work rate off the roving wingers, both defensively and attack, I'm going to go with Sevu and Mark. But tough decision. You could easily play Clark, but Mark and Sevu would be my starting wingers this week.
You make a good point about defence. I was sort of fixated on attack as I was talking, but both Mark and Sevu are probably the premier defenders in terms of that line speed pressure, getting in that passing channel, getting in Marcus Smith's eye. Just having that body up there. We used to see Malachi Fekitoa do it really well. Just get in that eye line so he has to tuck and go, rather than being able to sort of release that pressure and find that edge.
And let's talk loose forwards then as well. Artie Savia, I'm imagining, will be at 8. So if Artie Savia is at 8, Jipper, who are you putting at 6 and 7?
I think you have to go Dalton and Sammy Penifina. I think, solid combination, know each other really well. Great in terms of the versatility of the line-out. I think Finau's definitely there. Just his line-out ability, he's like a third lock. He's sort of that Kieran Reid sort of Lucy. Very, very, maybe I'm just because I'm a hooker, I need that for my comfort, I don't know. But yeah, and I just think Dalton deserves it. And I think this game suits him. Every time Dalton's played England, he's been formidable in and around the breakdown, but more importantly around the carry and the collision area defensively.
Bryn?
I'm actually going Ethan Blackadder at 6 with Papali and Severe. Just knowing what Ethan can bring and I guess possibly what Razor was wanting in that forward pack within, in that game. It could be 50 minutes, it could be 45, whatever it may be, but I'm just going Blackadder. Then I've got Jacob, and then Tupou on the bench with either Jacobson or Semipeni Finau in that 20 role. So, but again, you could easily play Finau at 6 with that line-out option. If they see that line-out option being more crucial for the work rate or what Ethan can bring, then you can easily have Finau on the bench. Then you have a Jacobson or Blackadder in that 20.
Now, Ross, we got a question a few weeks back asking why hookers always have to throw the ball in. I would really like Bryn to throw to a line out against England with about 6'8" people across the line out and then just rely on 2 locks. I think, like Ethan, Dalton, very capable filling a role in a line out, but I just think you need Finau's height. You're going to need it. It's going to make it too hard for the line-out caller.
And without Shannon Frizzell around, that's the obvious replacement, right? A guy who's able to operate in that way.
He's incredible. And his height, his speed of movement. And let's not forget defensively. We've got to steal a bit of pill as well.
Yeah, fair enough too. Now, before we head off to talk with Scott Barrett, we pre-recorded an interview with him last week. We'll go to that interview very soon. Just want to announce the winner of the Player Sport All Blacks jersey that we were giving away. Now, we had an email through from Ross Bridgens. Ross Bridgens went to his first All Blacks test 67 years ago. So long ago, it was played at the Epsom Showgrounds. I don't even know where that is. I've lived in Auckland pretty much my entire life. So I'm presuming that is the main showgrounds, but I don't think they're called the Epsom Showgrounds anymore. So Ross, over 100 tests to his name, read it, and his dedication to the All Blacks, including being at 2 winning World Cup finals. We thought, well, it's hard to turn down a story like that for this All Blacks jersey. So as you can see over here, the Players Sports All Blacks Adidas jersey was up for grabs. Thank you so much to all of you who entered into this competition. We had over 50 emails, so many comments on YouTube. Thank you for all participating. We can't get to all your questions and all your comments, but we try each week to get to as many as we can. So, that said, the man who's going to be captaining in this jersey for the first time this coming weekend against England is Scott Barrett, and we caught up with him about how he relates with Scott Robertson and why they work together so well. It's pretty awesome to welcome the All Blacks captain to the show, Scott Barrett. What's it like, knowing that's your position and now everyone knows and you can just get on with the job?
It's great to be at this point, and I guess filled with excitement to get into the season. Yeah, ready to go.
What does it look like? I mean, the way that you and Razor have worked in the past, do the captain and the coach get together on a Monday morning and have a chat, or what does it actually look like?
They have, with Razor, I think he sort of drives, a lot of the philosophy, the culture stuff within the group, and how you operate within that. You have key relationships with your coaches who drive different areas of the game, and your role as captain is to, trust the guys in their key positions, be it the players, your game drivers, your 9s, 10s, your 15s, trust them to be able to influence on the ground in the training park. With their strategy alongside the coaches. So, that's the beauty of the All Blacks. You're surrounded by a group of talented guys, not just the players, coaches, and guys striving to be experts, yeah.
A lot of New Zealand's probably going to find out through interviews and just, spending more time getting to know them. But you spent a lot of time with actually all of them. I don't know if you've spent time with Jason Holland, I'm not too sure, but the majority of that coaching group you've had a lot of time to do with, more so for the New Zealand public. What's something that they can be looking forward to, and knowing that there is a new kind of feel, a new change of, what these new coaches are coming in, and what is it to be expected in being new All Black coaches?
Yeah, I have worked with Jason Holland back in Canterbury in 2014, 15. So, yeah, all the coaches have actually had work with in the past, and I think they'll just want to be, the best in their area, like Jace in the forwards. He's always learning. Leon with his attack stuff. Coming from the Blues, and I think it sort of combines, their own expertise in different areas, and Razor would be sort of overseeing and steering the ship in a way like that everyone's heading in the right direction, and that's what he does best. He does that with energy, and he ultimately knows how to get the best out of his people. Yeah.
Do you have a mentor? Do you have a person you go to?
Within the group, Jace Ryan, he's a good coach and someone that I'd sort of, I guess, trust and go to, specifically around my game and anything outside of that. Kerry Evans is great to have him in the group. He's really sharp with his, I guess, simple focuses. He really puts your mind at ease.
He's a psychologist.
Yeah. He just really simplifies things, I guess, for someone like myself who can get a wee bit busy in the mind at times. He can sort of hit you right between the eyes and, give you some direction,
We had Artie in here as well, and he talked around with the learnings of the World Cup around what he might have thought would have been something that they could improve on and what he reflected from. And he talked around pressure situations, being able to adapt on the run. And actually, Scott Hansen actually talked around this. A good All Black or a good player is able to be adaptable.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of your really good traits that you were able to do because you're a constant rugby astute person. You reckon you'll have those key players and being able to have those conversations along with Kerry as well?
Yeah, I think you got to lean on your experience within the group. Ultimately, you want to be able to sort of trust yourself out there to make a decision. So that's working alongside the coaches, working alongside Kerry to, I guess, be able to execute in a high pressure situation like a World Cup. So I think the resources around us in the All Blacks is it's amazing and pretty lucky. So I think it's utilising them and I guess not leaving a stone unturned within that environment to, I guess, set yourself up for success.
Scott Hansen definitely won't let that happen. So definitely won't. He'll be screwing you up pretty quickly. So there'll be some honest conversations.
So you're a thinker. You're a guy who contemplates things and really considers things. It seems like when we look back at the All Blacks captains, you look at Richie and Kieran Reid and Sam Cane, that seems to be a consistent trait. A person who is quite level-headed. That's where you think your strength is?
Yeah, I think so. You got to be able to make decisions in the heat of the moment, and I think outside of the rugby field, you do have time to make decisions. On the rugby field, potentially you don't have as much time. So, you just got to back yourself in those moments and trust the guys around you to make their own decisions as well.
As a lot, and you're leading, and then you've got your game drivers, you've got your 10s, your 15s. How important is it for you to connect with them as the captain? Do you spend a lot of time with your game drivers to understand where they want to be and how that helps you and your pack?
Yeah. Hall's probably laughing because I've told him to kick the ball out a couple of times. Just kick it in the stand.
Kick it in the stand.
I think that relationship's, or the spine's pretty critical to any team. Being aligned with your attack coach, how you want to start a game, and I guess any potential adaptations you might go to within a game if it's not going well or if this happens. So you're, I guess, on the same page, and it's almost automatic with, I guess, what they're thinking is what you're thinking as well.
Yeah, and you got your brother as one of them, your older brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got the ability to trump him and say, no, mate, I'm the skip.
Yeah, I think there's, you trust guys in their own domain. If he's seeing space out wide that we need to get to, or the kick space is on, then, we'll trust that, or vice versa. If I feel we can engage a team through a maul or a scrum or keeping the ball tight, then I guess you got to be able to back each other's decision making around that, and that sort of comes with trust and having guys that own it out there.
I think it's probably one thing, Ross, that I think actually maybe a lot of people don't actually understand that. Yes, Scooter or whoever the captain may be, but there's so many moving parts with that to be able to get the best out of the team. Like Richie Mwanga would drive the attack week, the whole week. So, Scoot would come in and be able to say, this is what he's thinking. Richie's done the work with Steve, with Scott. They did it around that. Then you got your defence leaders that are running it. And so, it's very easy for a player to be able, if you're concentrating on your own domain, you're only really concentrating on that and possibly your own performance as well. So, and I know with those coaches that are there, it's pretty similar in terms of being aligned. It's probably the most important thing, right, Scoot, to be able to get the result when you're all on the same page.
The higher you go in rugby as well is the more you just focus on your job and being really good at your job. Like, I guess probably back in first 15, you might be able to do a lot of work outside of your job as a forward. You might be running in the back line, you might be doing a bit of kicking, whatever it might be. But at test match level, you nail your basics and you do them really, really well. And you have 15 guys doing that. You're gone a long way to winning a game, yeah.
So you used to do a bit of kicking in the back line back in the day?
Yeah, occasionally.
I'll see you at training. Scott. You get a game of touch going, and this guy's about 100% just scoring tries, diving, and everything. So he's got a skill set for it.
Yeah.
Got a skill set.
A competitive edge for it.
Over competitive there.
I imagine growing up there was a fair bit of competition going on. So, but you're a bit of a footy geek then. Do you watch a lot of it?
Yeah, I do. I watch the top 14 highlights from the weekend, like on a Monday. Some of the premiership games, English premiership, and top 14 even. Just sort of, I don't know, just to see how teams play the game differently. You know, you can take stuff away. You can sort of double down on your own game. Tactically, what are teams doing differently? Yeah, particularly around some of the bigger matches like the European Championship and that sort of thing. It's an interesting watch, just to get a different, I guess, perspective on how to play the game. Yeah.
Where do you see the game in terms? You've got England that are coming down. You're going to be going to the Northern Hemisphere at the back end of there. You've got the Rugby Championship. The areas that you probably see that are going to win your Test matches.
Coming out of Super Rugby, teams love to attack. But I think at Test match level, I think you really get tested. You know, you got to have a solid defence, solid set piece, and kick really well. Those are probably three things that Northern Hemisphere teams, South Africa, would really test you on. So you got to be pretty sharp in those three areas, and I guess the natural running game will come out, and can score a lot of tries off the back of it, hopefully.
Do you think in that way maybe the Blues have helped everyone out by playing more of that style, and so there's maybe some more experience down here in confronting a team that just wants to come at you like a truck and kick?
Yeah, for sure. I think they've had a really good season. A simple game plan that's confrontational, using their forwards with wingers floating around. Like it has been an interesting style, and obviously very effective. So I think that's, with guys coming out of that environment to, you know, share some insight into that style of game will be of value to the All Blacks. Yeah.
Is there one team in particular that you're really looking at your lips to?
I'm not looking too far past England, to be honest. I think yeah, with where I am, you know, we want to start really well, and they're a team that pride themselves with defence and like a pressure game that will try to squeeze you to make mistakes, and I'm super excited to play England.
Yeah, and they're playing a good variety of game. We had Scott Hansen on the show, and he was talking about how they might not be the team that everyone thinks they are in New Zealand. And that's got to be exciting that evolution is happening all around the place.
Yeah, they've got some skilled guys. Typically, they might pick a slightly heavier pack, but I think they've got some athletes within their group, but still have that style of pressure rugby to, I guess, strangle you. Like the Ben Earl guys who are pretty dynamic, and also, they've still got that physical edge to them there.
You're at a ruck.
Yep.
Who is one player in the world that you don't want to see coming at you to clear you out? Who's the person that's like you keep your eye on?
Probably locally or historically, it would be Brodie Retallick. He'd just zero in on you. If you're over the ball, he's, you know, that's how he's made his mark on the game. You know, through some of his clean-ups, especially early in the career where you could tuck a shoulder a wee bit more. So he's very physical around the breakdown. Probably in the current team, Ethan Blackett will, he's at the training park, he's pretty heavy.
Doesn't follow the rules of training, doesn't pull punches.
Clarity, you got to watch out.
Probably those two. If you're committing to getting over the ball, you're making sure you're locking it down. Otherwise, you're getting spat out the back, eh?
Yeah.
On the other side of it, who would be one person you've seen in a ruck? I'm like, oh, there's one. Nick White, possibly. Is he one? Is he one he's good? Or
Yeah.
Halfbacks, come on.
Yeah, I got a little bit excited in that game, eh? I think. And post that, I actually got told to stop picking on halfbacks. So
we're an easy target, mate. We talk a lot, mate.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We're an easy target.
What about your favourite part of the game? What is the part of the game that brings you the most joy? Like, what's the skill set or the thing that you come off and go, man?
Seeing the joy in fans' faces after a game, or just hearing their stories of how much they love the team that you're following, or where they've come from. It might be their first game, or they might have travelled across the world. Those interactions with fans, with family who have travelled, it's pretty awesome. I guess within the game, you sort of have a whole week of preparation, and that comes down to an 80-minute performance where you got 23 blokes who have, put it all out there on the park, and all going well. You get to share a moment in the sheds after where you can sort of look each other in the eye and say, "Yep, that was pretty awesome."
You love the culture.
Yeah, I love the culture. As you've probably found out, I'm a bit of a rugby head, so yeah.
Well, it seems to flow through the family. We had Bodie and Geordie on last year, and geez, once they started talking code, it's like you guys sit around with almanacs.
It's an IP. There's just the amount. It's like an encyclopedia of rugby. All different positions been able to come together collectively. So
100%. Oh, thank you very much for your time, Scott.
Cheers.
Really appreciate it. Great to have you on the show, and all the best for the season to come.
Nah, thank you. Cheers.
Talk soon about the Boks v Ireland encounter, which everyone's talking about, supposedly the encounter to see which is the best rugby team in the world in the men's game. But first, let's talk a little bit of women's rugby. The Black Ferns are taking on Australia next week in the second encounter of the Laurie O'Reilly for this year, before they go to play England in September, and then, of course, the WXV. And the Black Ferns hooker, Georgia Ponsonby, has come into camp today, and she's joined us. Georgia, thank you very much for coming on with us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
The Pac 4 didn't go the way necessarily you guys all expected it to go. So has there been a heightened edge, and what does it feel like preparing for this?
Yeah, no, we've had, and we were in camp not last week, week before, and had a really good building camp there leading into this game. We had an internal, we had our trial game, which was cool. Some new girls really stuck their hand up, and like our internal competition that we've got within the team is really awesome. So every time we're out on the pitch training, we're trying to beat the other one and do better. So I think that's really key for us going forward is internal competition. But we looking forward to the next few games coming up, Australia being the first one. So, yeah.
An internal trial game, is that no holds barred? What's that like?
We pretty much got split into two teams at the start of the week, which was really cool. Let some individuals really stand up and build their leadership as well, I guess, which was pretty awesome. I think it's just a chance for people to stick their hand up. Everyone got to, have a fair chance at putting their name forward. And, I guess it's just another chance to get a game of rugby in, which is really good, obviously building into a test match, trying to get as much game time in, be pretty important,
So out the back of Pac 4, there's obviously the surprising loss down in Christchurch. What have been, I suppose, the key focus areas for you girls leading into this next sort of step? And you've got a massive calendar out the back of this test series as well.
We talk about our DNA a lot and what that looks like for us. Like what is the Black Ferns DNA, and I think we're still on a journey to figuring out exactly what that looks like for us. Obviously, over the World Cup, we were there was a lot of flair out there, a lot of offloading, a lot of just ball in hand playing in our own 22, and it was very high risk. And then obviously last year we tried to do the same, and it probably didn't pay off as much. Obviously, teams have really good defence now, and that doesn't necessarily always pay off. So there's the territory and the kicking game that needs to come in, which I think has been probably our big focus at the moment, working that out with our kicking game and introducing that, and obviously that takes a lot of time. So I think just getting that balance of running and offloading and knowing when to kick the ball and get us some decent territory, I think that's probably been our biggest focus at the moment.
Is there an element of patience that comes with that? Can you say, hey, look, we need to give ourselves a year or two to really bed this in?
I think you've really nailed it on the head there. Like, nothing comes just like that. It takes a lot of practice. I guess that it might look like that, taking a step backwards before we can go forward, but I definitely have full faith in our coaching group and the players that we've got, that we're going to get what we want to be. But it's going to take a few mistakes and a bit of learning and a bit of risk involved to see, like I said, what really that looks like and what is DNA and what do the platforms really, what's going to pay off for us. How do we use all our strengths and what we're good at and put it into a game that suits us.
A bit more kicking could mean a bit more throwing for you, a few more line-out drive tries. They can't all be bad.
Yeah, a few more tries, but say no to that.
If our viewers are looking or listening to you, what can we expect from Australia? Obviously, in Albany, they struggled against you girls. What can we expect to see from them in terms of that, I suppose, a bounce back of such?
I think Australia, they're a side when they're on, they can be really dangerous. But they've got some really skilled players. Their backline, they've got some flair. I think when they get the ball wide and when they're really direct, they're really dangerous. So I think they'll probably be a bit the same. They'll probably want to play to their strengths. Like, they've got some big ball carriers in their team. I think their backline's really skillful with what they can do. They also have a great kicking game with Bella there. So I think they'll probably look to try and play on those strengths a wee bit more. I don't think they really use those probably the way they like to in that first Laurie game against us. So, probably expect that.
Sounds like you've got a fun year ahead. Thank you very much for joining us, Georgia. Really appreciate your time.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Now, we've been promising it. The Boks versus Ireland, a huge encounter given the context of the Boks winning the World Cup, the Irish dipping out early, but the Irish being so good for such a long period of time. We've obviously got Rassie Erasmus still there. We've got Farrell still there. Most of the players are still there. It's a pretty incredible matchup and probably the biggest matchup of the next few weeks. Guys, let's talk a little bit about this, because I suppose first and foremost, the conversation that this is the battle for the world's top team. I mean, is that without doubt, Jipper, or are you happy with that as a conversation?
Oh, how much abuse do I want to get from the nation? I think they are the most or the least disrupted teams out the back of the World Cup. South Africa are the world champions, so in my world, they are the best team in the world. If Ireland go to South Africa, I will happily say they are number one if they come out with a series victory, because that will be some effort. From what I saw last week from a Springboks side that was supposed to be weakened, now with the big dogs, I just don't. They're a very good side. It's nothing against Ireland. I just think Springboks at home, I'm even thinking about when the All Blacks have to go there later in the year. It is just, she's a big mountain to climb. And Malcolm Marx is there.
So much of their success has been based on the way that Gibson Park and Sexton run that show, Jipper. They've run it so smoothly, so many strike phases, they seem to go on and on and on, so well organised. With Crowley, and I presume Murray steps into the breach, especially in South Africa?
Has to be Murray. He's built for this. He is a tough customer. Obviously was on the Lions tour, so he knows what's coming. And I think they'll probably base their game a lot around Murray and take a bit of pressure Crowley and let him play when Murray decides, versus, I suppose, the Aaron Smith sort of style of halfback of constantly just playing that quick ball. They'll still have their nice attack shape. They'll build phases. They'll build pressure. But as we see with most teams that go to South Africa, if you're going to be successful, you're going to need a good kick strategy. And it's going to need to be territory-based, but it's also going to need to be contestable-based. And I think a lot of success, or most teams that have had success over there, that contestable games come from 9.
Yeah, and I also think with Conor Murray, like an experienced campaigner, has done multiple British and Irish Lions tours, has played over 100 games for Ireland. But if you're talking around the box kick game, his execution is probably, I'd probably say one of the world's best with the way that he does it. And the reason why it's so good, and I remember when we played him in 2017 with the British and Irish Lions, this is a long time ago, but still has value right now, is the depth of his kicks. Now, when you're watching, and the number that was kind of floated around when you first talked around the contestable kicks, it was around that 25 to 28 metres. But with Conor Murray, he shortened that probably another 7 to 8 metres, with it being 18 to 20 metres. And the reason why that was done is because so the wingers didn't have to chase so far. That 28 metres is probably a little bit too far if you don't get it right. But that 18 to 20 metres, it's really easy for that winger to be able to contest for that ball. And if that escort isn't right, then they're able to get up for the ball. But even if there are 4 or 5 escorts in that pocket that Jip talked about, you've got time to try and elude it and get into a position where you can at least try and contest for the ball. So that is a little bit different in terms of what we were talking about with the English and the New Zealand series. But with Conor Murray and his execution of skills when it comes to contestable games, if they do want to go to that type of style, he's one of the better players that can do it at that distance and execution as well.
When you just talk about that escort pocket, the shorter the kick, the less time you actually have to create that. So it actually gives you a starter's chance. And because of the height and his ability to just be pinpoint exactly on that 18 to 20 metres that Bryn talks about, just puts them in the race, if not probably ahead of it, because it's their game. It's his game. And if they are to go to South Africa and win this series, he will be player of the series.
So we've spoken a lot about Ireland and what they're going to bring. Let's talk a little bit about South Africa. I mean, we saw them a couple of weeks ago. They were very, very good against Wales. Tony Brown is probably the added element to this. Last year in the World Cup, we saw Ireland get over on penalty kicks and some really good D at the end of the game against South Africa's line-out drive. What is Tony Brown going to bring to this to make a difference from what we saw last year?
It's a good question. I always think, the Springboks are so strong. You don't want to change too much. But what I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bryn, again, getting outside my lane, but it's strike plays. I think Tony Brown's kettle of fishes, So their phase play, their kick strat, I think will remain pretty similar, but I think their strike plays. And the way what I mean by strike plays, if you remember in the 2015 Super Rugby final, the little Limo Sapona spun his back to the opposition and kicked the ball over his head from a 4-man line-out. He loves a 4-man line-out. And the reason he loves a 4-man line-out is all the players can run the same lines and you can have 3 or 4 variations. So from a defensive point of view, it looks the same every time, but you don't know what's going to happen. So maybe there'll be a 4-man line-out strike, some, I suppose, different attacking methods of scrum. The thing with Tony Brown is he is one step ahead. There will be something fresh. And 9 times out of 10, it comes off a line-out for him, a short line-out.
Now, we've had a couple of interesting emails come through. Another one from Dan Nermal. You've got 2 emails in today, mate. Congratulations. Do you think the reason why Northern Hemisphere teams don't have as many World Cup victories as the Southern Hemisphere sides is because they play too much rugby throughout the year? I think it's a really interesting idea when we look at these 2 teams now because of the way it's changed in South Africa. They are about to become far busier when they enter the European competitions on top of the URC in the coming years. It's probably not a bad place to test it, Bryn. We'll see a difference there. But when you do look at it and you look at these 2 teams and the amount of club footy they play, it's hard not to think that he might be on the money here in a way.
It could be, but I just think that situation in World Cups, they're just different. That kind of footy is just very, very different. And it's a lot of pressure. It's been able to adjust on the run. It's been able to make smart decisions under pressure, whether you're fatigued or just being able to have it mentally as well. And I think it's just different rugby. So it's hard to get a gauge whether it's a test series and, there might be a bit of silverware on the line, but it's not to the point where it's a 4-year cycle and you've got one game that's going to dictate whether you're going to win a World Cup. Look, you look at Ireland, for example, where they went through the whole year or the whole 3-year cycle when they were the number one team in the world and then they end up losing in the quarterfinal. So, and I don't think it comes back down to how many games they're playing. If anything, when you do play more, you have opportunities to be able to improve your craft. And it's not like they're playing all those games, 30, 40-odd games. They'll have times within the year where they're taking time off to be able to get their bodies right. So, yeah, I can see where it's coming, and then it could be a possibility. But I just think Rugby World Cups are a lot different than you have in your normal calendar year when it comes to test series or test matches.
This may sound like a silly front rowers comment, so take it with a grain of salt. Wouldn't you rather play than train? That's how I oversaw it. Like when it was like a storm week in NPC and you played 3 games a week, you'd be like, oh, how hard's that? But in my head, I was like, this is mint. I don't have to smash my mates. I can go out there and play 3 games in 7 days. How good.
But and also as well, it's not like these guys, like I just said, it's not like they're playing every single game. If their bodies are tired and they've got all the GPS metrics, they've got all the SNC, the physio, so they'll be having conversations, especially the experienced players around if they're tired or not and they need a little break. So, yeah, as a player, like those storm weeks, Jipper, I used to love them. And for the people that aren't from New Zealand, like the NPC, you'd play 3 games in kind of a 10 to 12 day period. But we used to love that because you just wouldn't have to train. You knew that you could move on next week, and sometimes a recovery flush and not being able to think too much about what's happening around game plan and all that, and it becomes a lot leaner within the menu of what your game plan is. Sometimes we had our best performances in those storm weeks. So,
what was it? It was normally a Saturday, a Wednesday, then a Sunday.
Sunday, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So what's that? 8 days. Beautiful.
Yeah.
3 games of footy. How much footage to review? Brendan and I'll be back at the bus. Just frothing.
I can imagine the two of you while you had an iPad sitting there.
Oh, we were so bad. We were so bad. So bad. We'd be just back there with computers cutting clips. It's like literally about an hour after the full-time whistle. Everyone just be like, what are these idiots up to?
Oh, mate. The amount of times that, like, straight after the game you're on the bus, especially if you're traveling somewhere, it's like going to the analyst and just go, mate, can you chuck me on my iPad or give me the computer? And like, they must have hated us, Chip. Like, seriously, the amount of how demanding they were. Like, can you put clips in? Can you put clips in? He's just finished coding the game. Like, mate, we need clips for this week. We need clips for tomorrow. Like, yeah, we were terrible. It was absolute code.
Mate, the worst is when they'd code your tackles, and I'd just hit them up Monday. I was like, mate, that's not a missed tackle, mate. And I'd say, sit down with me here, and you just tell me how I've missed this tackle. Can you tell me how you put that down as a miss? And they'd just see me coming every morning, and they'd be like, just take it on the chin, buddy.
I can imagine that. And did you ever win?
I would say Troyden Weber. I don't know if he's still watching it. He was the Blues analysis. I would say I probably had a 40% strike rate.
Right.
Of getting it overturned. But he was pretty ruthless. I did like. He would always be pretty blunt.
And you would intercept him before those stats got to the coach. Is that how this works?
No. The stats are up. And I'd be going into my one-on-one, It wouldn't even have mattered. It's just I've got OCD. And if I just don't think something's right, I just have to say it. But it's a strength, but very much a weakness as well.
Yeah, I can imagine around the house, it can get you into a bit of trouble here.
Oh, not around this house. I tell you what, I'm ranked 4th in this house.
Behind the dog.
Yeah, absolutely. I just do as I'm told here. It's probably the one place where I'm most placid.
Plenty to watch and plenty to look forward to watching here on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. This coming week, we've got Ethan Roots from the England camp coming into the show after Test 1. We've also got Adi Savir on the show. The week after that, we'll have Sevu Reece on the show. So, plenty to look forward to over the next few weeks. Thank you very much to the boys for coming on once again with all of their analysis. And thank you very much for tuning in. We'll catch you next week. Mā te wa.